Very well, my friends. So we're finally in the last chapter of this series, and today I'm going to show you how we can create a new pose, save our pose, and use that pose for our character so that we can start preparing the presentation that you, of course, saw on the thumbnails. I always mention that the thumbnail is very fun because you guys see that thumbnail when the course is published, of course, but I don't see it until the very end of the chapters where I'm actually like making it. So I'm gonna load in here our good friend Thomas, and of course we're gonna, it doesn't really matter if we take the hair out or not, because what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be posing the character pretty much like a doll. Right now, I'm gonna go to the garments here real quick, and I'm just gonna load in a couple of garments here for the character, a couple of pants and a shirt. There we go. Oh, let me go over here. I'm just going to say add, very important, so that we don't delete the other one. And that's it. So now, of course, if we simulate, the cloth is going to be simulated across his body. And the cool thing is the following. If we go to the avatar section, and you are, of course, using a legit version of Marvelous, you're going to have all of these poses available to use. So, for instance, let's say we're going to be using this running pose. If I double-click the running pose, I'm going to get two options. Pose only or pose and joint translation. Normally, you're only going to be using pose only. The joint translation is, for instance, if the whole body moves, right? So if we're doing a pose where he just like jumping or something, and there is some translation, some movement, and not only rotation, at that point, you might want to be using pose and joint translation. Also, align bottom to ground, depending again if the character jumped up or down on the scene. So I'm going to hit OK, and what's going to happen, as you can see right here, is that the character is going to simulate, and we're going to see him in this sort of like running pose. And a couple of things happen. The body moves, of course. The body is now posed in this sort of like running pose, and the cloth also moves, right? Like the cloth simulates itself, and we get this sort of like effect. At this point, we can like continue to tweak things around. Like we can move things like up or down. We can continue adding garments if we want. However, ideally, when we're working with clothing, as you guys have seen so far, it's a lot easier to work on this sort of like T pose or V pose, and then at the very end, pose a character for our like own goals. So I'm going to go back to the original pose, again, pose only. You can see he goes back to the T pose. And now let me show you how we can create our own pose. I'm going to delete all of the elements right here. And if we go to the upper sections, there's an option here that says join or show avatar joints. If you are aware of how rigging works in the 3D world, you know that we have these joints that represent the bones of our body, and these joints have an influence over the mesh that composes or creates our character. So if we modify this rotations, as you can see right here, we're going to be able to just like pose a character, like create a different pose for our character. If I go online and I look for Plague Doctor, you're going to see that we got a bunch of different like options on how we could pose him. I think a pose like this will be very cool. Of course, this is a feminine doctor, so I'm probably going to keep the hand like to the right like this. And I want to talk about two principles here before we pose, which are very important for the creation of a good element. Now, we know that we're going to have our like full HD picture right here, and we want to have our character in such a way that the communication of the body looks good, right? There's probably going to be like sort of like medium shot where we're going to see the head, the hat, all of the cloth, the gloves, everything. There's going to be a little bit of a lamp right here. We also have a little baton that he's going to be holding. So this is probably going to be the thumbnail that I'm going for. And this actually follows one of the 12 principles of animation, which has to do with how you read an object. So clarity on your expression. A very common mistake, and I'm going to go full screen on this one, guys, because I do feel like it's very important. A very common mistake when people are posing characters is they tend to keep things like very close to the center. And it might look good right now in camera if I do this sort of like fighting pose, but the problem is both of my hands are in the same sort of like plane as my torso. So if the lighting condition is not perfect, it might be a little bit difficult to read. Compare this pose right here to this pose right here, and it's a little bit clearer, right? I'm going to switch stances so it's a little bit easier to see. But you can see how now that my hands are in different positions and the silhouette of the hands, look at the silhouette that we have right here, they change. It's a lot clearer, a lot easier to see. Another great example that I like to give is magicians. When magicians are presenting their tricks, they don't always present them here because it's difficult to see, and you can think that they may be cheating by hiding something in their coat or something. So what they normally do is they'll present it like this. They'll be like, this is my empty palm, and my empty palm over here, and this and that, and they're going to do their whole trick, but always in such a way that's easy to see and understand. So when you're posing a character, you want to make sure that you're very clear on how you are posing that character. Another very important thing about characters is balance. It's a very, very common mistake that I see in portfolios where characters don't look like they're balanced. And unfortunately, here inside of Marvelous, we don't have a controller that we can use to make sure that everything is just like nicely set up. So my best advice, if you have an action figure, I got one right here, like this one, you can try and see which kind of poses work for a character that's going to be, there we go, for characters that's going to be here inside of Marvelous Desire. So since I want to have this sort of like moving forward kind of walking position, I'm going to go for this one right here. I'm going to download this MB207 pose, and I'm going to double click on it, which is this sort of like contra pose to move, as you're about to see. And then I'm going to start rotating a couple of things right here. So I'm going to go, for instance, to this area right here, and I'm going to rotate him a little bit sideways, probably like this. Well, actually, since the shot's going to be like this, it's probably going to be like this. I'm going to go to the head. Let's rotate the head as well. The face. I'm going to rotate the face as well. Kind of want him looking down a little bit like this. And then he's going to raise his arm up. So I'm going to grab this arm, and I'm going to raise it up. A very common issue that I see when people are posing, they do not take the clavicles into account. Clavicles are very important. So I'm going to push the clavicle up a little bit and forward a little bit as well with the Z-axis, like that. So he's kind of like going to be moving his shoulders forward. This shoulder, for instance, let's move it backwards a little bit. This arm, let's bring it back. Usually when one feet is forward, the hand is going to kind of like balance out or balance to the other side. So this one's going to go, let's go on this one right here. We're going to raise the arm just a little bit right here. I'm going to grab this hand right here. I'm going to rotate it a little bit. And here's where you might need to spend a little bit of extra time. Like, this is not something that you're not going to be doing this all the time. And again, hopefully in the next couple of months, I'm going to be releasing another course where we go through the whole like game ready preparation for this character. But this does mean that you are going to have to do this again later on. I only do this right now, or I'm only doing this for this particular project because we want to have a nice presentation. And I always mention that having a nice presentation of whatever thing you're doing is going to give you more points in your portfolio. So even though this is only a high poly suit, like it's not optimized for games or anything, that doesn't mean that it's not something that we can already show in our portfolio because, well, we did a very good job, right? Like the final result so far looks very, very nice. So I'm going to be like making it sort of like a fist because he's going to be holding a baton, like a medical baton or something. And I actually want the baton to be pointing up. So I'm going to rotate the wrist just a little bit up. So you can imagine that the baton is going to be like this. It's always, again, always important to try to understand how things are going to be like presented, because in this particular case, if the baton is pointing this way, it's going to be pointing towards the lantern, and we're going to create this very nice sort of like 3 points of interest for our character, and we're going to be focusing on the main action. It has a lot to do with composition. It's a little bit of a more in-depth topic that we're going to be able to cover in this single video, but just take enough time to make sure that you can present your character in the best possible way. This bone right here, you might be wondering, why do we have a bones in the middle of the arm? Those are for twisting. So we can twist the bone here a little bit, for instance. Let's now rotate this in. Same for this one, we can rotate a little bit. And of course, we're gonna push this up. Let's bring it out. There we go. So you can imagine, guys, like we're gonna have our very nice sort of like side view like this, like showcasing the whole like whole garments of the character that we have, right? So I really like this one. I think it's a little bit too much here, so I'm gonna like expand this a little bit more, and then we can grab some of these fingers. I don't think we can grab multiple, can we? Oh yeah, we can. That's cool. So I'm just gonna grab like that one. Actually, it's not because you don't get a pivot point on the exact position, so we're gonna have to do multiple selections here. And we want to pose this as close as possible to what we're going to have on the final shot. Again, take your time. I remember when I was a student, I presented a work, and one of the like very like bad critiques or bad feedbacks that I got from my teacher, she said, "Your fingers look horrible. You didn't spend enough time posing your fingers." And she was very, I mean, she wasn't rude or anything, but she was very like, what's the word? Direct in saying, hey, if you're not going to do something like the right way, don't do it. Like if you want to pose your character to present it, that means that you're going to spend enough time preparing that character. If you don't want to pose the fingers because you feel like that's very boring or whatever, then don't pose it. Present it on a T-pose. It's not going to be as efficient or as nice. It's going to be a little bit boring, but yeah, like at least it's not going to look weird or bad like yours right now. And it really hurt. I remember at that point it really hurt, like hearing that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's part of the of learning, right? As an artist. Let's push this up a little bit right there. It's breaking a little bit of the clarity that said. You can see that the silhouette there is not super clean. But again, I'm imagining the sort of like the thumbnail that I want to go for, which is going to be like roughly around there. And I'm going to show you how to do the thumbnail, of course. And that's it. So once you're happy with the post, you're going to go File and Save As, and you're going to save this as Pose, okay? So I'm going to use the same naming convention. As you can see there, we got A for size and stuff like that. So I'm going to call this Holding. There we go. And once we have this, we can now jump onto our project and bring it in. Now, I'm going to go File. Let's do New Project. Let's no, we don't want to save. File, Open, Project. We're going to open our Plague Doctor. Now, I've done this test already for this particular project, and one thing that I noticed is that the hat starts falling down because we got rid of the nice strong line that we have right here. We can bring it back again, or we can pose the character and then bring the hat back. I'm actually going to do that second option that I just mentioned. So I'm going to grab the whole hat and I'm going to delete it so that we don't have to worry about the hat just yet. We still have the file, so we're not losing anything. And once this is ready, what we're going to do is over here, we just go to the holding pose, double click, and we go over here, pose only. Now, very important, pay attention to this. This is going to be heavy. It's not going to be as fast as we saw on the example because we got a very complex suit for the whole character. So sometimes when I hit OK, it will take a couple of minutes for the cloth to fall a little bit, kind of like simulate a little bit, and then the character is going to start posing itself. Be patient. I'm going to stop the recording to make sure that this works nicely and I don't get a crash. But again, will take time. The last time I tried this, it took like 4 or 5 minutes to finish the pose. And once it finishes the pose and the cloth is still moving, let it sit for a couple of more minutes so that it finishes simulating before we start tweaking all the stuff. Okay, so let's go. I hit OK. Again, as you can see right here, nothing is happening. It feels like it's not working. It is working. It just will need a little bit of time first for the cloth to kind of process. And once the cloth processes, the character is going to start moving. Okay. So again, I know it's very weird, but this is the way it works. So I'm going to pause real quick and I'll show you the result after it finishes the pose. As you can see here, it's still posing. Just want to show you that it is working. I didn't change anything. It's the exact same process. Now I'm going to again pause it and wait for the whole thing to finish. Very well. So here the pose is finished. It's still simulating. I'm going to stop the simulation. So as you can see, 1 second here, still just bouncing over there, as you can see. There we go. And yeah, so the character is now in pose. So this is again the thumbnail that we're going to be using later on for the final render. And here's where we need to start doing some tweakings. Again, this is not the asset that I would use for final production. You can see that there's a little bit of an issue there. Let's turn off the joints. So the gloves have a little bit of interpolation. So when I have to go there and start moving things around, that we're going to talk about that in the next video. Let's turn on high resolution so we can see the whole detail. We can also see, for instance, this band's getting some weird bundling over here. So yeah, but everything is close to what we want for our character, right? We can now add the hat. We can add the mask even. Remember, we added the mask. In the files, you're going to find the low poly mask with all of the maps available. So you can see the whole preview here inside of Marvelous. But yeah, this is how posing works, my friends. Now, I do recommend, it's another one of those things that I do as my go-to option. I always save another version and I call this pose. Because if I need to go back and fix other things, well, I need to use this, right? I need to somehow make a save point so that I can go back to the original A pose and just modify or change a couple of the elements for our character. So yeah, that's it, my friends. This is it for this video. Make sure to get to this point with your finalized pose character, and I'll see you back on the next one.